Athens is a city that surprised me, I have to admit. Based on the accounts of what I heard from other people who had visited, I was expecting a very different city. And when I arrived to a city that I actually ended up really enjoying. Now, yes, I will fully admit, Athens is not the rich or the opulent city that other capital cities in Europe might be. It's not Paris, it's not Rome, it's not Madrid or London, but there is a grittiness and a saltiness that I really, really enjoyed. Now, there are some neighborhoods that aren't the most aesthetically pleasing, Ammonia being one of them, which is actually located a little bit north of the main tourist area. But places like Monasteraki, Blaka, Kolonaki are lovely and lively, with other neighborhoods like Geramikos and Exarchia sort of coming somewhere in between the two. Athens has something for everybody, and that's something that I really, really gravitate towards. I have to own my bias. I myself am not the bougiest of people, and while I do enjoy, visiting rich and at least richer cities, I do find that while I love and enjoy the opulence and the architecture of some of the wealthier cities in the world or even in Europe, after a while, wealthy cities do get, dare I say, a bit boring. Cities like Athens are kind of a dying breed. Life is getting more expensive everywhere, and cities, especially capital cities, are becoming more and more expensive. And what I loved about Athens is that there were a number of parks, a number of public spaces, and a number of affordable places to eat, drink, visit. Affordability and the city's, the city's grittiness and its independent, chain focus environment, and a place that isn't necessarily built around making wealthy tourists and wealthy people happy or catering to them, is something that I personally really, really enjoyed. It honestly reminded me of like Montreal circa 2010, before the city, like a lot of cities unfortunately, were changed by the, condo boom. Although condo boom or not, I still really, really, really love, Montreal. This video, though, isn't about Montreal. It's about Athens. And when I visited Athens, I actually didn't stay in Athens the first time. I was in Athens twice, once at the beginning of my trip and once at the end of my trip. And the first 3 days that I spent in Greece, I spent not actually in Athens, but in Piraeus, which is kind of part of Athens, but is its own, city further to the southwest of Athens. It is well serviced by public transportation. In fact, the green and the blue line end in Piraeus. So getting to and from the airport and to and from Athens is actually really simple and really affordable. It's a 20-minute subway ride from Piraeus to the center of Athens to Monasteraki station. And it's maybe €1.40 for a trip, or I think it's maybe €4.50 if I'm not mistaken, for a 24-hour pass, which comes out to about $6 Canadian, which is, not that expensive at all. And honestly, if you're staying in Athens, you will probably end up using the metro a lot more than you think you will, unless you are like me and you just love walking and are happy to walk absolutely everywhere. And never mind, what it'll cost you to take a taxi or an Uber. So I personally loved staying in Piraeus. It's a bit more residential. It's quieter, but because it is its own city, it has all the amenities that you would want, to service you while you're staying there. If you want to spend time in Athens because you want to go out to, the bars or to, the clubs, then obviously, staying in the city itself makes sense. But if you're like me, where you're not really into the night scene, and you're not really looking to go out late at night, staying somewhere that is a little bit quieter and not as touristy, might be something for you to consider. If you're going to Greece, odds are you're going to be flying into Athens and thus Athens International Airport or Eleftherios Venizelos Airport. And getting from the airport into Athens is pretty easy. You can take a taxi or an Uber. There are buses that are also available as well, but I actually recommend that you just take one of the trains, either the subway or one of the suburban rails. Each costs €9 and take you right into the city center, and they also take you all the way to Piraeus if that's somewhere that you want to visit or is somewhere that you yourself may end up staying as well. Accessing the trains is actually really simple. Once you exit the airport, all you have to do is take the stairs up to the skyway that take you right to the train station. You can buy your ticket at one of the automated booths and then walk downstairs to the train tracks and then take the train right into the city. When you go to Athens, you can use a suburban train system to access, the greater Athens area, but odds are you will be sticking to the Metro subway system itself. The system has 3 lines. There is line 1, 2, and 3, or 1 being green, which is also the oldest line, 2 being red, and 3 being blue, which is also the newest line, and in fact just opened up a new extension from Athens into Piraeus just a few years ago. The system is really affordable and really accessible and easy to use. And I want to give credit, and especially to the engineers and, the government workers or whoever managed to build such an intricate system. Because when I went to Rome several years ago, I realized that Rome only had 2 metro lines, but that the lines themselves didn't actually really provide you much access or service to Rome or places that you wanted to stay and visit in Rome. They were really built along the periphery. That's not the case with Athens. Athens has lines that run all around the Acropolis that take you up to the north, down to the south, and it kind of gets you to everywhere that you need to go, to all of the tourist attractions and to all of the main parts of the city. So I want to give props to the engineers and the government agencies that built an accessible and fully functional underground rail system that can get you everywhere that you need to go, given that the city itself is built around multiple hills and also multiple ancient sites. When I visited Athens, I visited in the fall, and the weather was so gorgeous. I spent most of my times outdoors, wandering the streets, visiting the parks, seeing all of the sights, and odds are you will do the same as well. Unless that is if you're visiting during, the winter, where the weather might be a bit more hit and miss. I spent 3 days in Athens. 1 full day was actually dedicated to Piraeus, which was mostly the day that I arrived in Athens, in Greece. That's the day that I decided to spend my time in Piraeus. So I actually really spent only 2 full days in Athens itself. They were 2 full days, 2 long days, morning until the evening, walking and doing stuff days. But I did find that 2 to 3 days is probably the right amount of what you need in Athens. 3 days if you're, going during the peak season and you might have to deal with greater lineups and things may not be as readily available and accessible. But you can definitely get it done in 2 days if you book your tickets online, if you have a bit of a schedule, and also if you are a bit of a walker like me. Although, again, when I say a bit of a walker, I mean I was doing like 20 to 30,000 steps a day. So I was walking for anywhere from like 10 to 12 hours a day, which may not be feasible if you're going in July or August. And given your own enjoyment for walking or ability to walk or accessibility needs may also not necessarily be something that you can do within that time frame as well. There is a lot to see and do in Athens, but a lot of the sites and a lot of the neighborhoods can actually be clustered together. And I found in retrospect that the city, even though it's not officially split between like an east and west, can, for the purposes of, tourism, be split into, 1 day dedicated to seeing, neighborhoods and sites on the east side of Athens, and 1 neighborhood, or 1 day I should say, being dedicated dedicated to visiting and seeing the sites and neighborhoods on the west side of Athens. And so, funny enough, each side, east and west, each have a bit of a top 5 that I would recommend that together form a top 10. So let's go into a deeper dive into the top 10 of Athens that is going to be split between the top 5 of the east side of Athens and the top 5 of the west side of Athens.